Red Bull's second seat has been the talk of the paddock for a while, and outgoing Ferrari driver Carlos Sainz has emerged as a #1 contender for Red Bull's second Formula One seat next season, and after the Australian GP Horner has shed light on the second seat for 2025. Sainz is in his final year at Ferrari after being replaced during the winter by Lewis Hamilton for 2025, despite being the only non-Red Bull driver to win F1 races in the previous 18 months, and is still unemployed for next year. He also required surgery during the second race weekend of 2024, but recovered to end Max Verstappen's early season dominance with victory in Australia 2 weeks later. The first time someone other than Verstappen has won a Grand Prix since Sainz in Singapore last year. Christian Horner said that Sainz appears to be our nemesis. But now he looks to be on Horner's radar after the team manager hinted at an interest and went out of his way to express it. The Australian Grand Prix was a poor weekend for the leading contenders to be Verstappen's 2025 teammate. Current driver Sergio Perez's great start to the year came to an end at the worst possible time for Red Bull, with Verstappen retiring from the Grand Prix, while his key rival Daniel Ricciardo had a disastrous home race for the second Red Bull team. Yuki Tsunoda performed brilliantly, scoring RB's first points of the season. In a perfect world, he'd be a better option for Red Bull Racing than he now appears to be. But that's where Sainz comes in. Horner was asked after the Melbourne race if Tsunoda was being neglected, and he suggested Sainz as an alternative. Yuki's a very quick driver, Horner added. We know that. But we want to field the best pairing that we can at Red Bull Racing, and sometimes you've got to look outside the pool as well. You've had a very fast, unemployed driver win the race, so the market is reasonably fluid with certain drivers. The hint was plain. So, Horner was asked, would you take Sainz back? Based on a performance like that, you couldn't rule any possibility out. Any team with a 2025 vacancy, including Red Bull, should seriously consider recruiting Sainz. That includes Mercedes, Aston Martin, and the soon-to-be Audi squad that has been chasing Sainz for some time. Horner demands that Red Bull deploy the best pairing we can. Sainz would be an improvement above Perez and a more persuasive option than Ricciardo or Tsunoda. I think we want to field the best pairing that we can in Red Bull Racing, and sometimes you've got to look outside the pool as well, Horner said, before referring to Sainz. You've had a very fast, unemployed driver win today's race, so the market is reasonably fluid with certain drivers. Sainz was also a former Red Bull product, teaming Verstappen, Daniel Kvyat, and Pierre Gasly at Toro Rosso from 2016 until his early departure to Renault at the end of 2017. When asked whether Horner would consider taking Sainz back, he replied, "Look, based on a performance like that, you couldn't rule any possibility out, so I think you just want to take the time to decide." Obviously, Checo was compromised today. He's had a great start to the season too, so we're not in any desperate rush. Carlos is the only driver that's beaten Red Bull in the last year, so he appears to be our nemesis. And when Norris and Leclerc were asked on Sainz's reputation following his victory and whether he is underestimated, they made it plain that Sainz is highly appreciated in the paddock, at least among those who pay attention. Everybody knows Carlos's worth in the paddock, Leclerc said. He's one of the highest rated drivers in the paddock. He's been extremely strong every time he was in a Formula One car, and he has showed it multiple times. So I don't think he's underrated for that. I think everybody knows Carlos's worth, and that's why I've said many times that I'm not too worried about his future. I'm sure that many team principals are, he doesn't say it, but for sure they are speaking with him, and I'm sure he will have many opportunities and he'll just have to make the best choice for his career. Norris, who spent the first 2 seasons of his F1 career alongside Sainz at McLaren, agreed Sainz was highly rated by the people who know him, know what he's capable of doing, know his effort level, his approach and dedication to wanting to be one of the best, exactly like he's proved today, and over the last couple of weeks. For the people who know what he's capable of doing, you would never ever say he's underrated, Norris said. Of course, results are always a bit of a point to show, and people on the outside just easily judge things from what you see on TV. But when you've worked with him, when you know what he's capable of doing, and when things click, they click very well, and he has performances like he does this weekend. I would say all year he's proved to be a step up from what he has been last year. You're silly if you underrate him. It's likely that Sainz's relatively dismal year and a half at Renault, following his forced departure from the Red Bull family on his own terms, has influenced people's perceptions of him, and he may be missing a fraction of the pace required to be a regular major qualifying threat. But he is a tough all-round driver who has demonstrated that, at his prime, he can compete with some of F1's most highly regarded drivers. But there might be one problem. The circumstances surrounding his time as a rookie at Toro Rosso with Verstappen might be a stumbling block to his return to Red Bull. There was a lot of friction, but not between the two drivers, but their dads, Carlos Sainz Sr. and Jos Verstappen, are prominent figures in their careers. According to Red Bull motorsport consultant Helmut Marko, the various entourages ended up generating a poisonous atmosphere. That might not be something Red Bull wants to explore. Some close to Sainz believe Max Verstappen would be disappointed either because it risks being disruptive or because Sainz is too outstanding to be the easily defeated number 2 driver that Verstappen has had since Ricciardo left at the end of 2018. However, when it comes to sheer performance, Sainz must be considered. And if not by Red Bull, then by others, who have reminded everyone not just of his talent but also of his ability to be in the right place at the right time. "It does no harm," Sainz said, of the win for proving a point to watching team principals. "That is 100%. I'm still without a job for next year, so I guess this is going to help it. I think everyone knows more or less what I'm capable of doing. I do race for myself. I race to keep proving to myself that I can win whenever I get a competitive car, and whenever there's an opportunity to win in a weekend. I don't race to prove to team principals or to prove to people my value. I race to prove to myself that if I'm given a car, I can get it done and I can be up there. That's the mentality and the approach that I have, and I will keep having the rest of the year." But Mercedes has also been advised to snap up Carlos Sainz quickly, with Red Bull also reportedly keen on the Australian Grand Prix winner. The Brackley squad, which is looking for a replacement for Ferrari-bound Lewis Hamilton, has been pushed to sign Sainz now. A straight swap has got to be the obvious option for Mercedes. "He's done a phenomenal job," Sam Power told the F1 Nation podcast. And I think the next question is, we thought that Mercedes would be in the pound seats with this driver market, taking their time, can have the pick of the crop, etc. But given his performance, do you just go, well, let's snap him up now? Because I mean, a straight swap has got to be the obvious option for Mercedes. This guy is going to be hot property for sure. Red Bull, on the other hand, has surfaced as an alternative for Sainz, with Christian Horner confirming the Spanish driver's availability if they decide to replace Sergio Perez. "This is a really interesting one," Richard Crail added, because he obviously went up against Max in the very first period when Max came into Formula 1. And I think because everyone didn't realise how special Max was, we sort of wrote Carlos off so quickly. And then he had ethos around him, an aura rather, that it wasn't quite on the same level as someone like Max, but he's just chipped away and proved himself time and time again. I mean, look at how he goes up against Charles Leclerc. Phenomenon. The next question would be if he would be able to prove it against Max Verstappen, or would he be able to beat Russell and lead the Mercedes team? In his current form, yes, it looks like it. What do you think? Leave your thoughts in the comments down below.